our kind of introductions, and we've talked about who we are and why we support Bernie, and what we're going to talk about next is how to help Bernie win here in Washington State. This is the entire subject of our conversation, and if you guys have any questions, we hope that you'll ask them. We're going to be talking, my name, by the way, is David Spring. I'm the former training advisor of the King County Democrats. I'm on the board of the Washington State Progressive Caucus. We just had a vote of the Progressive Caucus, and they voted unanimously to endorse Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. That is going to help out a lot. I am also on the steering committee for Washington for Bernie Sanders, and there's probably, and I am a PCO, which we're going to talk about what it means to be a precinct committee officer, what it means to attend a legislative district meeting. I am a PCO for the Twin Peaks precinct in North Bend, Washington. Okay, what we're going to be talking about today are basically four things. Okay, number one, how the Washington State Democratic Party is organized. Bernie is running as a Democrat. Now, there's a lot of debate about whether or not he should have run for a president or as a Democrat, or should have run as an independent or something. Some people wanted to run for a third party, for the Green Party, the Socialist Party, whatever. My view as an American is every one of us has a political right to do whatever we want. I think it's somewhere in the Constitution. If it's not, it should be. And if somebody decides to do something, that's what they decide to do. And what Bernie decided to do, I believe correctly, was to run as a Democrat. Now, he routinely caucuses with the Democratic Party, both in the House and in the Senate. However, Bernie is also an independent. It's, I think, a fair way to characterize him. He is what I would call an issue-based thinker. He decides based upon the issues, not what somebody else is telling him to do. So this is why I think a lot of people like him. Independents like him, Republicans like him, Democrats like him, and all kinds of people like him. Now, I want to begin by saying one of the things that the press, well, the corporate controlled media would like you to believe is that Bernie has no chance of actually being President of the United States. I was around in 2008 with the Obama campaign. At this point in the Obama campaign in 2007, he had less than half of the support that Bernie has right now. The support for Bernie, both in the state and nationally, is phenomenal. Okay, it's absolutely phenomenal. And 40% of the people, actually 60% of the people in the United States still have no idea who Bernie Sanders is. And once people find out who Bernie Sanders is, I have a feeling that there's going to be more people. Or if you haven't signed a little sign-up sheet, raise your hand. We'll make sure that everybody gets that. Now, once more people find out about who Bernie Sanders is, I think we're going to see, I believe that he's going to win in Iowa and in New Hampshire. Our goal is to make sure that he wins here in Washington State. Now, I also spent 20 years teaching climbing courses. I brought more than 100 groups to the summit of Mount Rainier. I had students take my class who tried to climb Mount Rainier 7 or 8 times, and it failed all 7 or 8 times. And what I tell people about climbing Mount Rainier is that the first step in climbing Mount Rainier is simply believing that you can climb Mount Rainier. And the Bernie campaign is the same thing. We simply have to believe we can climb. It's going to be a big mountain. It's going to be a long process. And, what you want to tell people, and I think one of you talked about this earlier, is that when you talk to your friends about how, well, Bernie can't win, just let them know if we all get behind him, he can win. We know that there's going to be hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars spent to oppose him. Now, I also ran for office in East King County, and in a Democratic Party primary in the 5th Legislative District in 2010, I was outspent by the other candidate by more than 40 to 1. He also had every major endorsement of every political group there was. They even made up political groups just to endorse him, okay? And including, he was endorsed by the local Democratic Party, even though he had never really been a Democrat before. But that's kind of what the level of corruption that we had. But anyway, and the only not even my mother or daughter believed I could defeat him. But I believe that I can defeat him. When I went door to door, we're going to talk about going door to door. We're going to talk about canvassing today. And I beat him by thousands of votes. It wasn't even close. Not only can Bernie win, he can win by a massive margin, bigger than Obama. Now, I led about 30 Unite for Change events for Obama in 2008, and I hope that we'll be, each of us will be leading about 30 Unite for Bernie events here in coming up next year. Okay, so that's enough of that. So we're going to begin by talking about how the state Democratic Party is organized, how to become a precinct committee officer, what a precinct is, how to become a delegate for Bernie Sanders, both at the local level and the national level. And then I'm going to talk briefly about how to use a tool called Vote Builder to aid you in your efforts. Vote Builder is a Democratic Party tool that I spent many years training people on, so we're going to spend a little time. And that, by the way, that was also the key to my past political victories is the use of this little database. Now, so the Washington State Democratic Party. The Washington State Democratic Party is not what most people are told it is. I have friends who complain about the Democratic Party, how it is corrupt, and it's overtaken by a bunch of corporate fascist billionaire types. And I say that that's actually partially true. There are members of the Democratic Party who are corrupt. Some of them, so how I refer to that, and if you're going door to door talking to your friends, I call them some of the leaders, but not all of the leaders of the Democratic Party are corrupt, okay? In case you were wondering why some of these bills passed or seem like they're not on the side of the people, they actually were paid for by billionaires and by lobbyists, and they were just kind of getting their way, both in Olympia and Washington, D.C. But that does not mean that the entire Democratic Party is corrupt. I am a member of the Democratic Party. My parents were Democrats, my grandparents were Democrats, going all the way back to FDR, and I kind of resent the notion that somehow I'm corrupt or my parents or grandparents are corrupt. So you can almost think of the Democratic Party like a religion, like kind of Catholics or Protestants and stuff, that some of it is just simply they're Democrats because their parents were Democrats, just like maybe they're a Catholic. And you say, you'd say, well, this pope was bad, but maybe some other pope was good. I mean, you can't just condemn the entire Catholic Party, or whatever you want to call it, just because maybe they had a couple bad apples. Now, the next thing is the Democratic Party isn't even who the leadership, well, we have a Democratic governor in our state, Democratic senators and things like that. That's not who the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party is the 1 million people in Washington State who believe that they are Democrats and who vote consistently for Democrats, no matter how nutty it is, the Democrat they're voting for is. So we have, several million voters here in Washington State. There's about 1 million people who believe they're Republicans, 1 million people who believe they're independents, and 1 million people who believe they're Democrats. And so that, to me, is the Democratic Party. It's the people of the Democratic Party. Now, there is, within that, Washington State, as you are all aware, is divided into counties. Okay? And there's some big counties like King County that we're in right now, and then there's some smaller counties that we don't even need to know the name of the rest of those counties. But there are other counties, at least I've heard that. Now, we also have legislative districts. Now, the counties aren't divided by population, but the legislative districts are. We have 49 legislative districts here in Washington State. This is important to know because the caucuses are not going to be held by county. They're not going to be held by city. They're going to be held by legislative districts. And now, we are in the 32nd legislative district here in Shoreline, but there are 48 other legislative districts. And so one of the first things that we're going to want to do is find out what legislative district we are in. And I have passed around a sheet here that has a link to the Secretary of State's office, where you can go to that link, and by the way, you can have your friends go to this link. It's at the very bottom of this sheet, how we can help Bernie Sanders win Washington State. It says sos.wa.gov, and it's right at the very bottom here. And if you go to that link, by the way, we have this article also posted on our website, which is WashingtonForBernieSanders.com, and this video will be posted on our YouTube channel, which is Washington for Bernie Sanders, just with no dots. YouTube.com and then /Washington for Bernie Sanders. Now, at any rate, you go there and you click, you enter your name and I think your birth date or your age or whatever, and then they will look you up, and then you have to click on a little box called My Districts and Elected Officials, and they'll tell you what legislative district you live in, and they will tell you what precinct you live in. These are the two most important things you need to know if you're going to want to help support Bernie. You need to know what precinct you live in, and what legislative district you live in. Now, once you know what legislative district that you live in, my advice is to not wait until the caucuses actually start. The caucuses are going to be on Saturday, March 26th at starting at 10 a.m., which are most places. Now, the location of your caucus may not be known until sometime in 2016. Sometimes they hold the caucuses in the same place, like at a fire station or an elementary school or something like that, or a gymnasium. But sometimes they move the caucuses around. It's up to the chair of every legislative district to set up places for their caucuses to meet. Now, within each legislative district, there are approximately 150 precincts. Now, you can think of a precinct as having about 500 to 1,000 voters and being your neighborhood, the few blocks around where you live. Your neighbors and you are a precinct. Now, and keep in mind, though, every legislative district is going to have about 150 of these various precincts. So we're going to, so hopefully you will know what precinct you live in and what LD you live in, but we're not going to wait until March 26th. What we're going to do is, I think it's extremely important that you start attending your legislative district meetings. And I have an article that I wrote. It's on WashingtonForBernieSanders.com, and the article is called How to Become a Delegate for Bernie Sanders in Washington State. And in that article, there is a chart that has all the legislative district meetings for, there it is, a table that has all the legislative district meetings in King County. Now, Snohomish County and other counties, Thurston County, they're going to have like different things, but you can usually contact your county chair and they will tell you, and they oftentimes have a website, and they list on their website where the LD meetings are meeting, when they're meeting. They typically meet once a month, typically from like 7 to 9 on Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Thursday night or something like that, okay? And so you'll start putting those dates on your calendar, and they'll have a meeting in September and October. Now, they're going to be concerned about this election this year, which, you know, this election this year is important. Every election's important. But the main reason to start attending your LD meetings is there's two reasons. Number one is to find out if there is a precinct committee officer for your precinct. Now, the average legislative district, like I said, has 150 precincts. However, they typically have only about 75 precinct committee officers. The odds are only 50-50 that they have a precinct committee officer for your precinct. If they do not have a precinct committee officer, by the way, there is no charge to attend these meetings, and you're under no obligation to do anything you don't want to do, but you can volunteer to become the precinct committee officer. You actually have no obligation at all as a precinct committee officer. They're going to want you to like go door to door and talk to your neighbors about these Democratic candidates and all that. You can do that, but you don't actually technically have to do that. You can just simply become the precinct committee officer for your precinct. And if they have one for your precinct, you can get to know them, or you can become, you can do what's called adopt a precinct next to your precinct, okay? So then that precinct will be open, and you'll get that precinct covered as well. So you start attending these meetings. Now, becoming a PCO is an important part of helping Bernie. But the second part is getting to know the other members of the LD, because quite frankly, there will be a lot of uncommitted people that don't know whether they want to support Bernie or some other candidate for president. And by going to the meeting saying, boy, you're really excited about Bernie Sanders, and he's an honest person, all this sort of stuff, whatever it is that, the universal health care, whatever it is that you like about Bernie, and talking to people. But politics actually comes down to human relationships, becoming friends with people. Kind of like this is what we're going to do here today. We get to know each other, we become friends. And the people in the meeting, at the LD meeting, it'll look a lot like this. There will probably be about 20 or 30 people there, maybe 40 if you have some legislative districts that have a ton of Democrats, and they haven't many, maybe it's 100 people in some of them. They also have picnics coming up. You can go to their picnics and talk to people. And oftentimes, actual legislators, state senators, state representatives will be showing up, and there'll be interesting topics going on. mainly you want to get to know the other people, because at some point you're going to need to have to choose who you're going to vote for. And they'll have to choose who they're going to vote for. And people are more likely to vote for their friends. So if you go to a meeting and introduce yourself, hi, my name is Ben. I just decided to start showing up at these meetings, find out what's going on here. And that is one way of doing that. Now, so we're going to start finding out what legislative district we live in, and we're going to attend it. We're going to find out what precinct we live in, and find out whether or not there's a precinct committee officer. Now, the reason why it is important to become a precinct committee officer is when you hold the precinct caucuses, they'll have as many as, say, 20 or 30 precincts meeting in the same building. They might have 5 elementary schools in your legislative district, and all 5 will have precinct caucuses there, and you and your neighboring precincts will be meeting at one. And there will be like 10 to 20 people who will show up from your precinct. Even though there's like 500 to 1,000 registered voters, the sad thing is not everybody goes to the precinct caucuses, okay? First of all, in your precinct, there is, and I've done like detailed analysis of hundreds of precincts in Washington State. Our state right now roughly is about kind of 1/3 Democrats and 1/3 Republicans and 1/3 Independents, although it is now kind of shrinking to maybe 1/4 Democrats, 1/4 Republicans, and half Independents. Okay, this is another reason why Bernie being an independent, people ought to put that together. If half of the voters are independents, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have a candidate to actually identify, that independents could identify with. So, anyway, let's say that you have 1,000, I'm gonna try to keep the math simple here. Let's say that you have 1,000 people living in your precinct. And that means there'll be about 250 Democrats and 250 Republicans and 500 independents. And this also, by the way, includes a group that they call unknown voters. They have no idea who these people are. But they know that there's now, among the Democrats, they have, and when we get to Vote Builder, this is how Vote Builder organizes people in our state. If you become a PCO, you will be given access to the database for your precinct. You can actually tell all 1,000 people living in your precinct who they are, how they vote for, what they do. What I look for, in case you wonder how I managed to do so well, is there's a group of them that I'm kind of noted as being a progressive. My issue, by the way, is I'm trying to restore funding for our public schools. Somehow that has become a radical issue in our state, but we have like one of the lowest, I have a daughter, we have one of the lowest school funding in the nation. I'm trying to get some school funding. But at any rate, so in order to get this school funding, I had to kind of learn a little bit more about the Democratic Party. So there are 3 kinds of Democrats. There are strong Democrats, they call them SDs. And then they have likely Democrats. These are people that are, kind of sometimes say unkind things about the Democratic Party. And then there are like independent Democrats, and then they start to kind of move. And they also have kind of moderate Democrats. But the ones who are most likely to come to the LD meeting are the SDs, the strong Democrats. There's about 100 of them that live in your precinct. And you want to get to know those 100 people really well. Now, what I do, because I live way out in the mountains, I simply, I can't really go door to door like you can in your neighborhood. It would actually be dangerous. There's people with shotguns and large dogs and machine guns and nests and all kinds of signs saying, trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again. So, Twin Peaks is unusual. They actually kind of captured it pretty well in that movie. But, so what I do is I send these people letters. I send out about 100 letters before the precinct caucus, about the first March. And all I'm really doing is letting them know we're going to be meeting at the North Bend Library. Oh, what a shock! Okay, we're going to be meeting at 10 o'clock, and I'm hoping you'll come. And I pass out a little thing. This is what I have. This is an example of something that I will mail to people. I'll just simply put it in an envelope. I might have a cover letter. Hi, I'm David Spring. I'm your PCO. Although by now, this has been going on for many years. They all know who I am. They're all expecting their letter. They appreciate knowing where the meeting is. And what I found is they don't really care that much about what I think. And I invite them. Notice I say, whether you like Bernie or Hillary or somebody else, please come to the precinct caucus. I know that there's going to be people there who don't support Bernie, And as adults, this is very important to know. It's very difficult to change the mind of any adult. I mean, you can talk to them about the issues, you can inform them, okay? And I like what Cornell said at his meeting. He said, you know, just get to know them. Just get to know Bernie. Have you heard of Bernie? Just go out and get to know about Bernie, and then you decide whether you like Bernie. That's all you really need to do. Then they can decide if they like Bernie based on their issues. But anyway, so the idea is it's simply saying that we're going to be meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning, and here I'm just saying give me a call just because I don't actually know where it's going to be. But, and then I include 4 reasons why I'm supporting Bernie. Okay, just a nice short pitch and a couple of pictures and stuff. Now you don't, so that costs, you know, about a little less than $1 or so to send that out. So that might cost me like $100 to inform the strong Democrats where the meeting is. And that way when we hold the meeting, 20 or 30 of them might show up. And they might vote for me. Okay? And then I get to kind of move on, and maybe some of them, other Bernie supporters will show up. We kind of dominate the caucus, and that's what happened in 2008, and that's what's going to happen again. There's like one more chair back there. That's what's going to happen again in 2016. And if Bernie Sanders supporters show up, if Bernie Sanders show up at the precinct caucuses in the numbers that they showed up just a couple nights ago on Wednesday night, Bernie wins Washington State. Oh, what a simple fact. That's right. We're going to have a situation where now each precinct is entitled to a certain number of delegates to move on to the next level, and it's not all the same for all the precincts. And they divide it based upon the number of Democrats in the precinct. Now, I live in what used to be a Republican precinct. I managed to convert them over, so now we're a majority Democrat precinct. I'm kind of proud of that. One of the few in East King County. But the that just means that you're going to get, but if a precinct has 100% Democrats, some of the precincts in Seattle are almost 100% Democrats. There is no Republican. What are you doing? You obviously, you need to move to East King County. So, but in Seattle, so they will have twice as many delegates that get to move on just because they have so many Democrats there. And if they have a precinct with 500 people, they will only have half the number of delegates as a precinct with 1,000 people. So you see how it works on population?
So are you saying that one of the roles for a PCO is going to be to use Vote Builder, find the strong Democrats, talk to them, encourage them to go to the caucus, and then say to them why you personally support Bernie? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
That's the role of a PCO.
That's a summary of this entire plan. Mm-hmm. We're going to come up with a plan here of how Obama did things in 2004 or 2008 and how Bernie can do exactly the same process. Now, people said Obama had no shot in 2007. It was overwhelming. By the time we made it to the legislative district caucuses, there was almost no Hillary people left. I mean, actually Hillary was the other person running in 2008, now that I remember. Okay, so the bottom line is that it is all about getting people to show up. Some of you were absolutely correct that money does matter a little bit, particularly when it gets to the general election, but in terms of the caucuses here in Washington State, it's not going to play a major role. The volume of turnout on Wednesday night was one of the largest political events in the history of the Democratic Party in Washington State. Okay, what you guys did on Wednesday night was phenomenal. Now, you just have to get people to do it again come March 26th. But in between now and March 26th, if you can get a few of your friends and let them know this, and that's why we're going to post this on YouTube, to let them know that going to their LD meeting, before they don't need to wait until March 26th. In fact, if you wait until March 26th, it's probably a little too late. That you do need to do something. Now, you don't need, if you don't have $100 and you don't want to be sending out letters to 100 people that you don't even know, there are other ways of doing this. One way of doing this is that you typically will have their phone number. You can call people up on the phone, just make 100 phone calls. Or you can go door to door and knock on their door. Now, I have knocked on the door, I've knocked on more than 20,000 doors. I've been through numerous political trainings and Wellstone training, there's various techniques for how to knock on doors. I do not use the standard Democratic Party technique for knocking on doors, okay? They want you to kind of get in there and get out of there. I believe in building relationships. That I'm not in any particular hurry to go to X number of doors on X number of days. And quite often, a lot of them aren't going to be home. What I do think is important is have a flyer with a little whole thing in a rubber band. So if they're not home, over half the people, amazingly, are not home. I don't know where these people are, but they're not at their house, okay? And so what I do is you just put it on their doorbell, and they'll kind of get it when they get home, and that'll give them some information. So you can do that when you go door to door, or you can, when you do knock on the door, I think it's important to, by the way, it's very difficult getting these Bernie shirts. I'm so lucky that somebody got the Bernie shirt. But, yeah, I know, you guys got to get your Bernie shirt. I also, we have a Bernie bumper sticker. We should probably auction off the Bernie bumper sticker as well.
It took me 6 weeks to get mine.
But now, what we want you to do is have something, like some sort of button, some sort of shirt or something like that, so it looks like you're like somewhat official, and that you're not just out to rob them and you're not just casing their house, okay? So, now when I knock on the door, what I'll do is I'll just simply knock on the door and I'll take a few steps back, okay? Because that way you're not, or I'll ring the doorbell and take a few steps back. And then when they do answer the door, then you can say who you are and let them know you're just there to tell them that there's going to be a caucus coming up, and let them know where it is and see if they have any questions. But then, quite often, they will engage you in a conversation. You can say, so have you decided who you're going to support, or have you done any sort of studying on this? You can ask them open-ended questions. That's the key for starting a conversation, okay? And that's the Wellstone technique. It's just to ask an open-ended question, and then sometimes they will tell me a little bit more about Bernie. I've never heard of this guy. Yeah, well, he's actually this senator from Vermont, and he's trying to get the money out of politics and get the corruption out. He's basically an honest guy. I will knock on all doors. Just another thing I know. The Democrat Party will say, just knock on the doors of the Democrats. I think that's a little bit too confusing, and in North Bend you wouldn't be knocking on very many doors if you just knocked on the doors of the Democrats. So I will literally go knock on every door in every precinct and talk to every person. And I think that you may find that a lot of people will say, gee, this is the first time anybody's ever knocked on my door. Yeah, go ahead. Most people would say no. My experience is that you're lucky if you're going to get 10 seconds to 60 seconds with people at the door. People are extremely busy because they've got their lives going on. They resent. What I believe is the most effective thing that I do is a sheet of paper. That I know you're busy. I hope you'll take time to read over this sheet of paper. And the sheet of paper that I hand has information, and it has, by the way, this is Bernie's 4 points. I copied this directly from Bernie. And so please read this over, take the time to get to know a little bit about that. We hope to see you at the caucus. You want to leave them with a positive feeling. I teach classes in problem solving and communication. One thing you don't want to do is get a no out of anybody. You want to try to get yeses out of people. And the way to get a yes out of people is to be very careful about the question you ask them and to not ask them a no question. So I don't know if I would do that, but if you want to do that, what I've told people when they go door to door is you're going to have 500 or how many other people to experiment with. Try it on 10 or 20, see if it works. If it works, then keep doing it. If it doesn't work, switch to plan B. In PCO, it can be a little bit challenging the first couple of times you go to a door. What I would do is start by going to the door of your best friend and knocking on their door and letting them be the pretend homeowner and you're the pretend talker. So there is ways of kind of breaking into this. And like I said, if you are not comfortable going door to door, you can do the phone calls. If you don't want to use the phone calls, you can send out letters. You can also not do any of the above. I don't want you to feel like, oh gosh, there's a huge commitment here. You are helping Bernie if you simply show up at the caucus. You are helping Bernie if you go to an LD meeting. Whatever role you play, you're helping people over to your house, put the event on the Bernie Sanders website. You can email us and we'll put it on our local calendar, put it on our Facebook page. So there's a lot of things you can be doing right now. But what I don't want you to believe is that, oh gosh, if I don't want to do all this stuff, I can't help Bernie. There is tons of ways, even just sending Bernie a check for $10. Put you on the list, and Bernie gets to say how 500,000 people or 1 million people have already sent him $10. So that counts. Every person, whatever you can do will help. So we're going to try to become a precinct committee officer for your neighborhood. And then at the precinct caucuses, what's going to happen is you'll gather around the table, and let's say that this is our precinct caucus. All of you are people who showed up. And the person who's in charge of the precinct caucus is the precinct committee officer. So this is the Twin Peaks precinct, and I get to be in charge of it. Now, you could elect, so then there's gonna be a discussion. And people could talk about, you don't, by the way, you don't have to talk. You can go to the meeting and just, sit there when it comes time to vote, raise your hand or fill out your card. Now, but people can talk about who they're supporting and why they're supporting, and you can try to change people's minds. I haven't found that to be an effective technique, okay? That, as I said before, usually people going to the caucus are going there to support a particular candidate, and they already know who the candidates are. Occasionally, you might be able to talk one or two or three people into switching their vote, but it's likely to be that people are going to already have their mind made up, and at some point, there is going to be a vote in the precinct caucus. And the precinct will decide, let's say that you have 4 delegates that get to move on to the legislative district. From this group, 4 of us will get to, there might be 4 people or 2 people and 2 alternates that will get to go to the next level from our precinct. In a heavily Democratic precinct, there might be a lot more, but then there will be a lot more people in the room too. There might be like 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 people in the precinct. So now, so what will happen is, let's say everybody raises their hand, and there is, I think there's about 20 people there. 10 of you vote for Bernie, and 10 of you vote for Hillary or some other candidate. Then what would happen was that would mean that each candidate would get 2 of the 4 delegates to move on. This is an extremely democratic process. Then each subgroup, and let's say that 15 of you voted for Bernie and 5 voted for Hillary, then Bernie would get 3 and Hillary would get 1. Now the 15 Bernie people would gather over in one corner and they would decide who they wanted to be their 3 Bernie delegates. And the 5 Hillary people would gather in the other corner and they would decide who they wanted to be their 1 Hillary delegate. And then that would be, everybody would sign some forms and paperwork to say that yes, we all agree that this is what happened and this was what the vote in, and the person who led the meeting will fill in a form and turn it in to the leader of the meeting, which may be the chair or somebody appointed by the chair for the legislative district. And this will happen at all 150 precincts. Then there will be hopefully you will get a card. Let's say you got elected. You were one of the lucky 3 Bernie people that gets to move on to the next level. Now there will also be alternates because this next level is going to occur in a few weeks, and sometimes things happen. You get in a car crash or whatever, you get sick and you can't go to the meeting. Then the alternate gets to go, and the alternates should go to these meetings, but quite often alternates get to move on. So the next meeting will be typically held in a very large room, like a gymnasium, okay? These are the legislative district meetings where all of the candidates, and there may be like hundreds, and maybe like 600 people at the LD meeting. These were the people that were elected to represent their precinct, okay? And so I have been honored several times to represent Twin Peaks at the LD meeting. And then the question is, we need to elect delegates to go on to the congressional district meeting, which is the next level. Next level isn't the county, although county delegates are elected at the precinct meetings and at the LD meetings. The real situation is the pathway to the national caucus is from the precinct to the LD, to the congressional district, to the state meeting, to the national meeting.
How many congressional districts are there? 10.
Yeah, we have 10 now. We're moving up in the world. Washington State now has 10 congressional districts. That's way more than we've had in the past, because people are moving here apparently. Now,
Could you please repeat that?
yes, I'm going to say it one more time. You start out and by the way, I'm going to pass this around. We had a printer problem. I wouldn't make copies for everybody. It's a 9-page handout that's on our website called How to Become a Delegate for Bernie Sanders. And I describe all of this stuff in this handout. So I'm going to pass it around the room. You guys can look it over on this side of the room, and later on you can look it over on that side of the room. And I'm going to keep one right up here just in case I need to refer to it. But you start out at the precinct level, talking people into...
So this is on your page?
It's on the website. It's on the website. You can look at it on the website. And several of you already read it. Yeah, we've had a lot of people that say thank you for posting that thing. And so you start out at the precinct level. And then people are elected to go on to the legislative district level, what they call the LD. Then people are elected at the legislative district level to go on to the congressional district level. Now, every congressional district, this is a quiz question, a little pop quiz. By the way, we also have a map of all the legislative districts, you can know roughly where you are. Every legislative, so we have 10 congressional districts and 49 legislative districts. So how many legislative districts are in each congressional district? Roughly 5, but in fact, there will be parts of like 6 or 7, because some of them overlap the different. If I had my way, then each congressional district would have its own associated legislative district. But nevertheless, so what's going to happen is, I have a little chart on here that kind of explains the congressional district level. This was decided at a recent state party meeting, that the number of delegates to the national thing, it's on page 8 of our handout, and the number of delegates to the congressional district level, for the first congressional district they get 6, the second congressional district gets 6 delegates to the national convention, the third gets 5, the fourth, Eastern Washington, only gets 3, and the fifth gets 4, the sixth gets 6, that's interesting, the seventh, which is Seattle, gets 10. Twice as many as everybody else.
That's where we're here.
How can that possibly be fair? It's because there's a boatload of Democrats that live in Seattle, so they get 10. And then you get the 8th gets 5, the 9th gets 6, and the 10th gets 5. So there's twice as many Democrats living in Seattle as anywhere else. Now, if you want to organize, our plan is actually to try to have Bernie win in Seattle. If Bernie gets, obviously, if Bernie can win in Seattle and just get like half the delegates everywhere else, then Bernie wins the state of Washington. Now, so
I have a question.
Let's say that we're in the 7th congressional district.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when you go to your precinct meeting or to your legislative meeting, can you bring your own literature and try to change the mind of other people? Like
Yeah.
have a Hillary versus Bernie?
You can have
and
a
just
Hillary versus
lobby?
Bernie chart, and you can try to talk to them. And in fact, passing out literature, in my opinion, is more effective than trying to talk to people.
Yeah,
It's less intimidating. People could read it. They can decide. I've studied decision making for years and how adults make decisions. And it's a complex process, and they're going to have to need to see something on paper.
yeah.
They're not going to necessarily believe whatever you tell them. But again, I think you're far better off if you contact them before the meeting. Now, so the goal for the 7th district is maybe you want to be one of these 10 people who goes to the national convention, which is going to be held in Philadelphia. It's going to be held in Philadelphia this year or next year. And I actually don't have money. You have to pay your own to go to Philadelphia. I'm not one of those rich people. My wife just asked me before you came here, do I want to be a national delegate? No, I've never wanted to be a national delegate. I don't have that kind of money. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to become a congressional delegate. I want to become a legislative district delegate because they're the ones who elect the national delegates, okay? And literally, you want to have people that can show up at meetings, that they're going to attend. What you're doing if you want to go on to the legislative district meeting is you're committing to go for one more day. I'm willing to go to some high school gym, spend an afternoon listening to people, because what they're going to do at that gym, at the legislative district, there will be maybe 400 or 500 people there, maybe 600, is they're going to elect maybe 30 or 40 people to go onto the congressional district level. 1 out of 10 of people at the legislative district level will go on to the congressional district level. So maybe 1 out of 10 people at the precinct caucus goes on to the legislative district caucus. 1 out of 10 people legislative district caucus goes on to the congressional district caucus, and 1 out of 10 people at the congressional district caucus gets to go on and become an actual Bernie delegate for the state and the national. Yes?
Okay, so in that early process, someone's elected as a Bernie delegate, and they get elected to go on. And then they get elected to go on again. And then someone there changes their mind and says, can they flip and become
Yes.
a Hillary delegate at that point?
Yes, in fact, they can even flip at the national meeting, and people have. Okay, so it's important, if you're not going to run for the next level, that you choose who's gonna represent you wisely. Who will represent your precinct? Choose them wisely. Who will, and it's largely done based on how much work have they done for your candidate, okay? That people will literally bring resumes and little sheets of paper like this. I will bring these and pass them out to all 600 people. So when I go to the legislative district meeting, I want to go to the congressional district meeting, many people will literally pay $600, that you will get a list of all the people that are going to the LD meeting, and they will send them in the mail. They'll mail the 600 other delegates, and say, no, the vote's gonna be among those 600 people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, and those people can decide, they want to let them know about it happen. Some people will set up websites, or YouTube channels, or whatever they want, so.
David, would you be able to help folks here to move on, like help them to create a flyer or to create a website or that sort of thing?
Yes, so we have actually a website on how to build websites. It's called Create Your Own, Create Your Own Business Website.com. And we have a website called Create Your Own Video Channel.org. So we have lots of tools, and we have helped people become legislative district delegates, congressional delegates. This is what I do as a training place, in case you wonder how to train people. There are a lot of things that are involved in this if you want to do that. But quite frankly, what they're going to be looking for is, some of it becomes a personality contest, because each person is going to be allowed to go up onto a stage, and they're going to be allowed 1 to 2 minutes at the legislative district thing, and this could go on for hours. So it'll be like, of the 600 people who go to the meeting, probably 100 or 200 of them will want to go on to the next level. And the other 300 or 400 are just there to figure out who they're gonna vote for. And you will have, like, I will bring paper and I will have a list of names. And I'll be moving people up and down on the list in various categories. Well, this person sounded good, that person, and they're given 1 or 2 minutes to summarize what they've done for the candidate, either Bernie or Hillary or whatever, or what they might know about the political process. And then there's a vote at the very end, and you're allowed to vote for like 10 or 20 people, or how many ever are moving on. And sometimes there's ties, in which case that there is a second vote. And some people don't hang around. Some people start getting exhausted. They forgot to bring a water bottle and cookies and stuff to keep them going for several hours in a row. They didn't realize that this was going on for several hours. The precinct caucuses, sometimes are actually not that long, but the other caucuses can be quite long. So the legislative district caucus is the hardest one to get passed, in my opinion. If you make it past the legislative district caucus, there is actually only about half that number of people that show up at the congressional district caucus. So things have been kind of narrowed down. Like I said, there's only 5 legislative districts approximately in the congressional district. And they will once again meet at a high school gym somewhere. There'll be a few hundred people there. And of the hundreds of people there, there's going to be, in Seattle, there's going to be like spots for 10 people and maybe 10 alternates. And in East King County, there might be spots for 5 people and 5 alternates. And so there's quite a lot. Be sure to bring your credential that you got at the precinct caucus. This is very important. These credentials are your credentials. They are your ticket into the room. And they're not going to be able to say, oh, I lost my credential. No. If you got your credential to the precinct caucus, keep it with you at all times. You're going to get a credential if you do win the election at the legislative district level to go to the congressional district level. You need to keep that credential, okay? Because that's your ticket into the next room. If you win at the congressional district, well, they're probably going to know who you are by then.
Isn't that silly? Shouldn't it just be like a list of, like, you know, here's the list of all the people who got it? Like, why don't we just have?
Well, they do have a computerized list. What happens? Okay, good question. But I want you guys to understand this, because there's a lot of frustration at the precinct caucuses, at the LD caucuses in particular. And the reason why there's frustration is because the list to get into the room, you'll have to wait in line with 100 to 200 other people, and it might take you an hour standing in line to get into the room. Why was this? It's because they didn't have enough volunteers. The people running the meeting, this is very important, they are not paid. They are volunteers just like you and me. In fact, one of them likely will be me. And so people are very mad. How come it's taking you guys so long to use? Well, we do have a list, and we're trying to check people off at the list, but we also have rules about how the meeting is run. Now, how you can help is once you become a PCO or adopt a precinct, you can literally, at the precinct meetings, you get to help run the precinct meeting. You show up 30, 60 minutes, and you put out the tables and chairs and stuff. and you help register people and get them in, things run more smoothly, it would help, because quite frankly, in 2008, they were not ready for the siege of Obama supporters. The Obama supporters came out of the woodwork, okay, and completely dominated the Democratic Party, and then kind of went away. But for a while, there was millions. It wasn't in millions. It was like an unbelievable number of people showing up in these meetings and rooms. And so you can do the same thing.
That's what we want, right? This time too for Bernie.
Yeah, it will be the same way. And in
That's
my
what we
opinion, my prediction is it will be twice as bad or twice as good, depending upon how you want to look at it. Okay? If you're one person trying to organize and register people, you're going to be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But if you're one of the people that's in line with 100, if there's 100 people in line, that's a good thing for Bernie. Okay? If there's only 10 people in line, that's a bad thing for Bernie.
Did they
Is you sign up and you go, I am willing to be a volunteer at the precinct caucus, and I'm willing to be a volunteer at the legislative district caucus. Now, they don't actually need volunteers much past that, because people start winnowing themselves down, but they certainly can use help at the precinct caucuses and at the LD caucuses. Just contact your legislative district chair, and he or she will give you a big hug. So thank you so much. So then you show up, and there will be a list. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, I want to finish what I
Yeah,
think you
please.
started to say, which is that the number of delegates that Bernie gets to go to Philadelphia
Yeah.
really depends more than anything else on the number of Bernie supporters who show up at the precinct caucus.
Absolutely.
Because that's where it begins, and that's where the numbers are basically locked in. For
They
the most
are.
part.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
clear
that's
now,
for
it's
sure.
clear that I just wanted to make,
Yeah.
that's it. Unless, first, I have another,
Yeah.
you may want to get the, tell us about later on, about the registration. I mean, in some states you have to register as a Democrat, you have to register as a Republican. I think in Washington we don't need any of them.
Okay, that's a very good question. It's a commonly asked question, and I'm so glad you came today and asked that question, because I need to
Because I'm
talk
really
about that.
ignorant about this.
Well, that's, but everybody is, and the Democratic Party, pretty good in Washington. By the way, if you're watching from some other state, don't pay any attention to anything I'm saying. All this applies, I want to have a disclaimer here, to Washington State. I'm an expert on Washington State. All the other states do different things. Please contact your local legislative district in your own state. Okay, now, what's going to happen on March 26th is they will have a piece of paper that says, for the purposes of this meeting, I certify that I am a Democrat for today. Now, this could be tough if you're an independent or Republican or socialist, whatever. For one day, for the next few hours, you get to be a Democrat. And then you can go home and do whatever you want after that. So while we do not have party registration, not like many other states have registration, you register as Republican, Democrat, and then you kind of are those things. Are not our state. Our state thinks that like is not right. It's un-American to be labeling people. And so our state has weak political parties. Okay, our state preserves your right to be an independent and to change your mind, do whatever the heck you want. The parties don't like this, by the way. Both the Republican and Democratic Party hate the political process in Washington State. They hate the top two primary. They hate almost everything. But the people, actually, it's because of something called the Grange. We had this farmers independent Grange group that kind of took things over for a while. And they kind of got our election processes to be very low key. There's no charge, and while you do certify that you're a Democrat for that day, you can certainly change your mind tomorrow and even later on in the day. It's not a whole 24-hour period, and they don't define what the day is. But anyway, so for the next hour or two, you probably wouldn't get anywhere if you were nominating like Ted Cruz or something like that, although technically you could nominate anybody you want at the meeting. But it's likely going to come down to whoever the major candidates have declared for the Democratic Party. Now, and you are absolutely correct that if the people show up, let's say 90% of the people want Bernie, well then Bernie gets all 4 delegates for that precinct, and they all move on. And zero Hillary. We had out in North Bend, we had almost no Hillary delegates moving on. They had a very small group. By the time we got to the LD meeting, they had like a few of them off over in one corner. And they were going to get 1 or 2 delegates to the congressional district level, but they weren't going to move past the congressional district level because the Bernie delegates were going to swamp the congressional district level. Yes?
Just make it even more clear. So what kind of documents you need when you walk into the room? You need any kind of documents?
I think you do need a driver's license or a voter ID card, or they would like to see something. Now, technically, You could probably participate in the meeting and they would try to look up your information later on some sort of database. But you can keep in mind that these are volunteers, but all they want to do is check off a box. Oh, you're this person. They already have a list of registered voters. Here you are. Could you sign in right here? And that's all they really want to see, because they got to get to the next person. And if you don't have your ID, what you're doing is you're slowing down the line.
So just an ID.
Any sort of ID.
And don't even need to verify which address you live with.
That'd be nice, but I think if you start up with a library card, that'd probably be,
Yeah, you have a registration card, I think your ID and I.
yeah, that would be good, yes.
Now, at the precinct level, you said there's 4 delegates?
Well, it depends, some precincts are gonna get 8 or 10.
Okay, well, my question is like, if 1,000 people show up, or 50 people show up, does that affect the amount of delegates that the precinct's gonna get?
It should, but in my opinion, it does not. Because it's assigned, these are assigned based upon the vote in the last general election. How many people voted as Democrats for the Democratic candidate in that precinct in the last general election? So this is to be fair to the people in Seattle, that if they have all these Democrats, so the state party, by the way, the state party sets its own rules. If you don't like this, you can get on the rules committee for the state party and change it to however you want, okay? But those rules were set a few months ago, and they're not going to change now. They have fights over the rules every year, and the rules committee, they have the entire state delegation vote, and once the rules pass, that's the rules. For at least the next couple. These are all good questions, and now you kind of see why it's a convoluted process. And why we want to have this video, why we want to have more training sessions, and we are going to continue to have more training sessions. So we're basically at the process of going from the precinct to the LD to the CD. I want to talk briefly about the vote builder tool, and then I want to kind of wrap things up or find out if anybody has any more questions. Vote builder you could just get, in King County at least, you could just get a list of the registered voters in your precinct. And you could just simply mail all of them or whatever. But it's actually useful to kind of know a little bit about voters. Because they have what's called, in addition to strong Democrats or likely Democrats or independent Democrats, they have the amount of times they voted in previous elections. And if people vote, they're more likely to go to a caucus than if they don't vote. If they don't, they may be a strong Democrat, but if they never turn in their ballot, then they're not going to go to a precinct caucus. They're just kind of somebody who talks about being a Democrat but doesn't actually fill out a ballot. We had the same thing true with Republicans and independents. Sometimes they don't vote either. In fact, only about half the people bother to turn in their ballot. But nevertheless, so you have what are called 4x4 voters. You'll hear this talk. These are people that voted in the last 2 general elections and the last 2 primaries. Now this does not include local elections. When we're talking about a 4x4 voter, we're talking about every 2 years there are statewide elections, and every 4 years we have the national elections. So what they really want to see is, did they vote in the last national election, and did they vote in the last state election? And more importantly, did they vote in the primaries? Because that just means they really care if you're going to bother to vote in the primary. And so they call that 4x4, and then they have 2x4 voters, and then they have 1x4 voters. So when you look inside of Vote Builder, the first thing is you don't actually automatically get access to Vote Builders just because you're a PCO. The county chair controls Vote Builder. I'm not sure the county chair. The legislative district chair controls Vote Builder. You're here to keep me honest, by the way. In case I say something time, right? I'm doing fine. Now, the bottom line is the legislative district chair has a Vote Builder account, and the Vote Builder account is something that is paid for by the Democratic Party to help try to have Democrats get more votes and win elections and stuff. And if you run for a legislative district race, like I ran in the 5th legislative district, I would get access to all of the precincts in the 5th legislative district. You run for a county race, you get access to all of the things in the county. This is if you're a Democratic candidate. And if you run for a statewide office, then you get access to all the Vote Builder stuff for the state. As a precinct committee officer, you get access to the Vote Builder account for your precinct. So for Twin Peaks, I would get access to the 500 or 600 people that live in Twin Peaks. And you would get a username and password. This is just a website. You go online to the local library on your computer, and you enter your username and password, and then it brings up your precinct. Now, I have a handout that I can email something. We probably will post this on our Washington for Bernie Sanders website as we get closer. I don't actually intend on using Vote Builder. It is updated periodically, and I don't intend on using Vote Builder until about February of next year, 2016. That's probably about when we will be posting on the instructions, because the screens change from year to year. The process changes slightly. But here's the process. You enter your username and password. You go onto account. There might be a drop-down menu where you might have to select your precinct, and then a screen will come up that will be listing like 500 or 1,000 names. If you don't want those names, there will be a little menu box that says select here, and you can select from a drop-down list, Strong Democrats. And then you'll get a list of 1 to 200 names. And then there's another drop-down, how often do they vote? And you can select 4x4 voters. And that will tell you the people that are likely going to be coming to the meeting that you can contact if you want to do that. So there are other ways of using Vote Builder. Some households have 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. You can print out walking lists of all the houses in your neighborhood that will actually show the streets in your neighborhood and all the houses and who is living in what houses, and that way you can know before you knock on their door whether or not you're going to be booted out. Now, the fact that I am running, when I run Houston County, I'm just trying to get funding for the public schools. That's something that independents and Republicans like too. This is why I knock on all their doors, okay? Do you have any kids? Would you happen to like a school? We're trying to get some teachers. So, but Vote Builder is not a complicated tool. The benefit of you becoming a PCO for your precinct is you automatically get it. If you become an adopted PCO, it may be up to the legislative district chair whether or not they're going to give you access to that information for your neighboring precinct. My thought process is that most LD chairs simply want help. Okay, any help at all, any warm body that shows up, they're going to give them access. Oh, you're actually going to do something? Okay, you're in. So that's about all it's going to take. Now, so we've talked a little bit about how the party's organized. We've talked about what it means to be a PCO, about how the delegate process works, a little bit of how to use Vote Builder. On this sheet, there are some things that I want you to do. And people have said this at various Bernie meetings, the most important thing that some people believe is that Bernie needs to win in Iowa. Do you want to get my last one? I'll use this. No, I got it. I'll just use this. Now, for him to win in Iowa and New Hampshire, which is 2 crucial states, he could use volunteers. We've actually had some friends of mine have flown and moved to Iowa. That's how committed they are to changing the process. Okay, they are going to go personally to Iowa. They're living in Des Moines. They're going to be trying to talk people in Des Moines into voting for Bernie, and they're going to be showing up at the Iowa caucuses, and Bernie just got 1 more vote in Iowa. Now, but you may not be that dedicated. I'm not. Well, I am that dedicated, but I just had too much other stuff going on. So you could sign up at the Bernie Sanders website, which is simply berniesanders.com. Now, there's also people for Bernie Sanders, but that's not the same as berniesanders.com, okay? You can sign up as a volunteer at peopleforberniesanders.com, but the one that really you want to go to is berniesanders.com, and then you can sign up to do phone banking, calling people in Iowa, so that every person in Iowa has heard personally from you about why you hope that they will consider supporting Bernie Sanders. And believe me, this matters. If people know that Bernie has so much support that they've just gotten 200 phone calls from people begging them to vote for Bernie, they're going to start believing that Bernie has a chance of becoming the president, okay? So it does help to sign up for Bernie, and he's also looking for volunteers here in Washington State, and he'll probably put some of. But if you want to sign up to help in Washington State, we have a volunteer form which we divide by legislative district, and we are going to use this at the legislative district level. We are gonna organize by legislative district the Bernie volunteers from Washington State. We have a website called WashingtonForBernieSanders.com, and there is a volunteer form where you can sign up on that. So you can volunteer with the national campaign, you can volunteer. Now, we are not an official state campaign. We are going to hand our database over to the national campaign when they get here, okay? Now, they may get here next week. We did get on their radar screen on Wednesday night. They were shocked as hell to see all these people. So
I have to go, I will be in touch with you, I have a few things to.
You bet.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You have your phone number.
You bet. Thank you for coming, Cornell.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now, the next thing you want to do is sign up for our newsletters to find out about upcoming things. That's also on the thing. There is a link here where you can find out about the official State Democratic Party caucus thing. They try to explain it. And then, of course, you can start attending your local LB meetings. So, I believe I've covered all of the important stuff I wanted to talk about, but there may be things that you came here to learn that we haven't had a chance to talk about. Go ahead.
There's one more thing.
Yes.
You don't have to attend the precinct caucus on March 26th in order to vote for Bernie. The Democratic Party, they don't have them out yet, but they're gonna have a form. It's basically an absentee ballot that people can fill out. So if somebody says to you, look, yeah, I'd love to vote for Bernie, but I can't make it, they're gonna have a form that they can fill out, vote for Bernie, send it in, and it will count at the precinct caucus.
Right, and so the important thing there is that it's gonna have to, I believe, be like a semi-official form, and they're gonna have to do it correctly. But if somebody is working that Saturday or has some other reason, I have reluctance about that process. And I was one of the people that, this is a new rule that we passed at the state party meeting, that people could just go ahead and many of my friends voted in that rule. But I believe the important thing to do is to physically show up that day. And by showing up, I think it's the best way to preserve your rights. And so I would encourage you and your friends, I would actually tell people to take the day off from work. Go to the meeting if you can, even if you have to call in sick. It's one day out of your life, it's important. Yes?
So I try and get my friends to go to the precinct caucus. They won't go, so I get them to sign the form. And then I bring the forms, or they have to mail it in, or it has to be post-dated before the precinct caucus, or?
They're working on that process, and there is discussion about that. Some people believe it's going to need to be processed in advance. Other people claim that they can show up the forms, and it may be up to your LD chair. I would go to my advice, because by the way, the LD chair, the legislative district chair, is an extremely powerful person in the Democratic Party. They have almost unlimited rights, the legislative district chair. And if they decide this is what the rules are going to be in our LD, that could be how the rules are in your LD. Now, if you live in the 32nd legislative district, the legislative district chair is Karen Chase. Her mom is Senator Marilyn Chase, so she's pretty well connected. And they're both good friends of mine. Karen Chase may be in the position, and she also may be told by the state party what to do. And she will probably follow whatever orders she's given by the state party. But I would be in direct contact with the legislative district chair, because that is your best contact to the state party. Go to a legislative district meeting and introduce yourself to the legislative district chair.
Because it's just like you bringing your daughter, right? I mean, now you've got double the voting power. So if I can get my friends who won't go to the thing because they're not that dedicated, then they can sign the form.
They can sign the form.
Now I've just tripled,
The vote for
or
Bernie.
10 times more.
Yes,
more voting.
and so, yes, you can absolutely do that, but what I would do, you certainly, they need to indicate what precinct they live in, they probably need to have some information filled out on the form. But here's the thing, the first step I would do before I would do any of that is I would talk to the legislative district chairs. They are the most knowledgeable people about how the precinct caucuses will work.
Perhaps you could, you sound like you got an in, maybe you could update information about that process on your website.
We will. As we get closer to the process, as it becomes clearer what the process is, probably by January, we will have a clearer understanding about that. This is something new for the Democratic Party, and as you know, anytime you have something new, things can be a little bit up in flux. The precinct caucuses. If you want to run for the LD caucus, you will probably be asked to give a 1 or 2 minute speech of who you are and why you support Bernie, just like we did here today. I would practice that at home with your friends, and not so that you can become polished like Hillary, but just become so you can become confident like Bernie, okay? What I want you to do is to be able to state briefly, in 1 or 2 minutes, what your most important issues are and why you support Bernie. Any involvement you've had in the past in the Democratic Party, or just, I went to an LD meeting. I mean, you likely would be one of the most qualified people in the room if you actually went to an LD meeting. Okay. Now, and I found there were some other people there, and they didn't know what they were talking about, or maybe they did. So, and that may get you, that 1 minute speech may get you votes. People say, wow, that person really seems confident, and they really like Bernie. I'm going to vote for them. Then what will happen when you get to the LD meeting, if you want to go to the CD meeting, and it does matter to have passionate, powerful people speaking for Bernie at these various meetings, okay? Practice your speech. If you do want to go on to the next level, get it down to 1 minute. They may only allow you 30 seconds, okay? Sometimes if there's hundreds of people that have to give a speech, they have to limit, you get 30 seconds, go. And so, you've got to have a 30-second speech, you've got to have 45-second speech and a 1 minute speech. You're probably not going to get 2 minutes at the LD meeting. So I just want to warn you in advance that this is how things can move on. If you got little flyers, if you got your speech ready, you're set to go. I understand, we just got a couple minutes left. Any other questions, comments, observations? Yes.
Yeah, I was just looking on your sheet here, and I guess LD stands for legislative.
Legislative district, yeah.
And
CD is the congressional district.
Oh, the congressional, of course, and then you were just saying one a second ago, what was it, you just called it LB?
I'm sorry, LD, I'm bad at my pronunciation.
Oh.
Yes, go ahead.
It doesn't cost anything to book this room then, does it?
No, it doesn't cost anything to book. You can book a room at your local library once a month for free, and I urge you to go ahead and book rooms and start talking to friends. Have people come over to your house, do whatever you can, okay? I want to thank all of you for coming out on your Saturday afternoon to make time for Bernie. This is not only gonna help you, it's gonna help everybody who watches this video on YouTube, and it's going to help trainers who are going to be training for other ones. If you would like to be a trainer and have a training session in your own community, we will help you promote it. Okay? So thanks for coming.